Hello, Namaskar. Welcome you to the SAAR Analysis. I am Chaman Nayak and here's my take. What if the most dangerous geopolitical conflict in 21st century isn't just about Taiwan but about the water? No, I'm not talking because of fish beneath it, not neither because of island above it, but because nearly one third of global maritime trade worth of 3.5 trillion every year passes through the South China Sea. Well, it is one of the busiest commercial arteries on earth, and if the sea is controlled, influence can extend far beyond Asia. And 10 years after this international tribunal ruled against China's sweeping maritime claims, the legal dispute has evolved into something much larger. It has become contest over who writes this 21st century. And the evidence is striking. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Hague rejected China's 9-dash line. It claims under the United Nations Convention on Law of Sea, the ruling confirmed that Beijing had no legal basis to claim most of South China Sea, and it reaffirmed the Philippine maritime right. Yet, a decade later, the ruling remains unenforced. China has rejected the verdict entirely while expanding the Coast Guard deployment, military militants, artificial intelligence, artificial island, and military infrastructure across contested water. Instead of a conventional warfare, Beijing has increasingly relied on what strategic experts describe as grey zone techniques. Well, this grey zone tactics apply a constant pressure without crossing the threshold of open conflict. Now, this is precisely why South China Sea has become one of the most contested geopolitical theaters in the world. Because this dispute is no longer just about a sovereign alone, it is about whether international law can withstand the geopolitical power. And that explains why the countries far beyond Southeast Asia are becoming involved. Well, for United States, it views as a freedom of navigation as essential to maintaining this Indo-Pacific strategy. For Japan, it deepens the sea lanes for energy import. For Australia, it considered as a stability of water central to its own security architecture. Well, for European Union has repeatedly backed the tribunal's ruling because uninterrupted maritime trade directly affects its European economies. India, although is not a claimant but has steadily expanded its strategic engagement across naval deployments, defense partnership, ASEAN cooperation, and Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative. Even NATO members increasingly describe the Indo-Pacific as inseparable from Europe-Atlantic security. In other words, almost every major power has now strategic equities in the South China Sea. Not because they seek the ownership, but they cannot afford instability. For India, the implication has both been economic and strategic. Nearly 55% of India's merchandise trade and a significant share of its energy import passes through Indo-Pacific maritime network connected to South China Sea. Any prolonged disruption would raise the shipping cost, delay supply chains, and increase insurance premium. Strategically, China's expanding maritime footprint also extends its influence deeper into Indian Ocean through interconnected ports, logistic facilities, and naval access agreements. Now, this makes the South China Sea inseparable from India's own maritime security. But it is one of the reasons why New Delhi has strengthened defense cooperation across countries like Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, Australia, France, and United States, while consistently advocating a free, open rule-based Indo-Pacific. Well, this issue connects UNCLOS maritime security, ASEAN Quad freedom of navigation, India's Sagar doctrine, Indo-Pacific strategy, and evolving greater power competition. Well, for business, it represents a reminder that geopolitics now shape logistics, investment, manufacturing decisions, and many other. Well, South China Sea is no longer simply a maritime dispute, it has become the world's largest test of whether international law can survive in an era where increasingly defined by a strategic competition. If the legal rulings can be ignored without consequence, the rule based order weakens. If the strategic coercion becomes a new normal, every major maritime corridor from Arctic to Indian Ocean could eventually face the same challenge. Because the real question is no longer whether who owns this water, the real question is who will define the rules that governs the ocean and ultimately the international order for the rest of this century. That's all from today's analysis. I will be back with another episode. Till then, thank you for watching this.